Okay, good morning, and thank you for tuning in to Watching the World. I have sort of an interesting show for you this morning, which was inspired by watching another big presentation yesterday that talked about this trial. And I kind of sighed because I'm like, these people are not in the courtroom, they're just saying anything. So I said, let me cover this whole um, sex tape. I'll just say the word. It's too complicated trying to change words for YouTube. It is what it is. But today I really want to break down about the sex tape. I was actually in the courtroom, folks. I actually heard what everybody else was kind of hearing that was sitting in the audience. One of the marshals, the lead marshal, after some point, he told the judge that, we could hear certain parts of this. And that's when they turned it down, folks. Yes, they turned it down. But when I first started this case, I wasn't really verbal about it. I was taking a lot of notes, which I still do every day. It takes a lot because by the end of the week, I'm so tired. I'm barely keeping my eyes open because my day starts at 3 o'clock. I go down every day. I've been at this trial from day one, even through the jury selection. So it's very important that I try to convey to you guys what's really happening. Yesterday, I did a breakdown of the case, but it was in the middle of another video where I was giving my watchers, right? The watchers, the great people, the watchers, I was giving them a tour of New York City, which a lot of people from around the world have been enjoying. But now I just want to make a very precise video before I head down to New York City today to cover some events that probably the public at large does not know about. And I want to keep it that way, so I'm the only one on covering it, right? How selfish of me. It is what it is, folks. It is what it is. But anyway, let's talk about this case, and we're going to get to the video. But now that I've been in the courtroom every day, I can really give you guys an indication of what the government is doing. And I'm going to tell you right now, straight out the gate, I don't care about the ramifications that who come after me. Listen, I'm out here in the public. I'm willing to take it on, bring it on. But let me tell you something. They're trying to cook Diddy, and they were trying to cook him slow. Now they're trying to cook him very fast. And I'm going to break this down for you and show you the angle that the government has taken. And they're very effective when it comes to these cases and comes to these trials. I attended Donald Trump's trial, a former president, a man of great means. He walked away with 34 felonies, folks, 34. Not one felony fell off the ticket. They gave it to him straight. The only thing that saved his neck is that he won the election. Let's make no mistake about it. But anyway, let's look at Diddy's indictment. Now, I don't have any notes. Everything I'm saying to you is based on my experience of paying attention in court. Some things I might get inaccurate a little bit, but for the most part, I'm on point, okay? So the case started off, and I'm going to give you a walk down because I do have to start my journey toward New York City, okay? And I just noticed that my laptop is not plugged in. Okay, so now we have a battery factor in play, but it's okay. I'll get to the point. When we first started this trial, they brought in, I think they started off with like 600 people and they narrowed it down to 45. So I really honed in on the 45 that they brought in to interview them. The juror that was just kicked off, folks, he was one of these individuals that came through, and we sort of heard them go through the questionnaire. The judge would ask them certain questions they would have to answer. Some of the women, and don't get offended, people, do not get offended. Some of the Caucasian ladies would say he's guilty. They said, we saw the video. I'm just trying to give you a real indication of what I saw and heard, okay? You can process it the way you like, but I like it when people tell me the truth and don't make up a bullshit story. So that's just how I feel about it. So I'm trying to bring that to you, all right? The ladies would say, I saw the video, several. I saw the video. One says he was guilty, straight to the point. They could not get past the video. So then you'd have the judge, he would get into this whole thing with the individuals asking them, hey, listen, can you not be biased? and he would ask the question. Some people, you could tell they really wanted to be on the jury. So they would kind of answer in a way to try to line themselves in the hedge their format so that they could be on this jury. Imagine what comes with being on this jury, probably writing a book, whatever, right? That's just fluff. So at any rate, they boiled it down to 45. And then we were approaching the first week of trial, which would start on Monday. So at the end of the week before that Monday, there was an individual that wrote an email. It was a female. She wrote a letter to the judge, and she said basically she couldn't be on for whatever reason. So then the judge and also the prosecution and the defense, they were concerned that others would jump on that bandwagon and say, hey, oh, you can write an email and get out of here? Let me write one too. So what the judge said is, we're going to choose 12, an additional 6. Now, it's very important that you guys know the 12 and the additional 6, right? So you have 18. They've been there listening to this trial the whole time. Some people probably don't understand that because I never knew that until I started going to these trials. So you have 12 and you have 6, you have 18 sitting there that have heard everything. That's why when this particular juror left, they just moved one up, okay? They moved one up. All right, so because the lady wrote an email to the judge on that Thursday night before the trial, and I'm going off memory, so I'm pretty sharp here. Thursday night, on Friday, the judge says, well, let's choose 12 plus 6 and an additional 3, right? So now he was trying to have an additional 3 so that the main 12, the additional 6 would be covered if one of them backed out for Monday morning. So Monday morning came and they started to rock and roll. Now, what does it mean by rocking and rolling, folks? It means that now they're giving the opening arguments. The prosecution went first, and they talked about Diddy and what he had been doing and how he used this enterprise. They painted a picture that this big celebrity was using his funds and also his businesses, right? Not just Diddy, his business as an entity to do crime in the United States of America. And not only that, folks, in New York. And we know that New York, the Southern District, they don't play no games, folks. 95 to 98% conviction rate. So you basically, when they call you in or they lock you up, and mind you, we're talking about the defendant, they never gave him bond, folks. Never got out on bail. So that tells you a lot about this case and just how hot his seat is. His seat is burning up, believe me. At any rate, the defense, they kind of grabbed the bull by the horn. I'm from down south, so that's the term we use. You grab the bull by the horn. So you take accountability for certain factors of the case, right? So let me tell you what they took accountability for. Diddy came out. Now, Diddy didn't speak. I'm just saying his lawyers represent him. There's an agency there, right? They said, listen, he was a drug addict, alcohol. He was beating women, sort of like a monster. This is what's being painted, right? But he wasn't committing racketeering. He wasn't doing that. So they made that very clear that was the angle. They also expressed, folks, they expressed this clearly. This is a case of domestic violence, not a case of some huge criminal enterprise. So that's the point of contention, that the defense stood on business and they represented their client in this way. We're going to accept that he did these things. What has not come out in court, but I learned in the background, is that Diddy has been clean since about 8 months now. He's also been taking therapy. So put that into your pocket too. Do whatever you want to with it. I'm just throwing that out. I'm giving you a little background information. They did not express that in court. But here's the thing. Let me paint the courtroom out for you. On the right-hand side, you have the jury box. You have the judge up top. Very great judge. Very impressed by him. Very fluid. He wasn't as stern as Donald Trump's judge, who was really, he actually kicked us out of the courtroom when Costello was kind of pushing back about Trump. He made us all clear out the courtroom. It was very interesting. That was Trump case. This judge is a little bit different. He's more reasonable, and he makes a lot of clear points, but no nonsense. And he's not having it, folks. Don't try it. In the front of him, which is the first row, which I've never seen, usually you have the prosecution on the right, like in Trump's case. And then on the left-hand side, you have the defense, okay? So in this case, you have the prosecution sitting up front. You have 6 Caucasian ladies, and they're heavy hitters. I haven't heard one of them make a flub yet. It's almost like they know this case like the back of their hands. To be able to sit in that box as a defendant, they'll have you shaking in your knees, shaking in your pants, believe me. And I've seen Diddy. When Diddy came out on that first week of jury selection or what have you with the case, he looked like he came fresh out of a cage, and that might be his reality, you know, from what I hear. But he was so down and despondent. However, I've seen a different Diddy each day, especially after individuals have come on and they've discovered a lot of them have not been told the truth, even though they took the oath to tell the truth. That's a big problem, folks. It affects everybody, especially individuals on the jury or people like myself that has been in the main courtroom probably 95 to 98% of the time. At any rate, Diddy's defense, let me break it down. But before I go there, let me start with the prosecution, though. Comey is the lead prosecutor. Her father was the FBI director when Donald Trump first took office. Now, I'm a big Donald Trump. I like to follow his stories and so forth. So I know a lot about that, and I will be covering that when this case is over. But at any rate, and Elon Musk too, I like to get into that type of stuff. But anyway, his daughter is the lead attorney here, and she is sharp. I'm telling you, you may not want to hear it, but you don't want her on your case. You know, if she's on your case, folks, you better make a plea deal. That's all I can tell you. Anyway, Diddy has as his lead attorney Agnifilo, and he's sort of an interesting guy. I mean, he's really smooth with it. He's always apologizing. He's like Matlock. I don't know if you've seen that show, but he's a very clever guy, and I see why they use him because he's like the strategist here. He's definitely one you would want to have on your team. The next one is Tenny Garagos. Her father is Mark Garagos that you see on, and my battery is low. Guys, hold on. This is crazy. 1 second. Give me 1 minute. Okay, now we can rock and roll, and I don't have to be distracted. Okay, so we have the laptop plugged in, folks. We have it plugged in. Do not be afraid. All right, so let's rock and roll. So her father name, this is Tenny Garagos, right? She's a nice attorney. She's pretty good. Her father's Mark Garagos. He's been there from the beginning of the trial. He was there the first couple of days. He left. He came back when she cross-examined Jane Doe. So he's pretty clever. I watched them on Two Angry Guys. It's him and Hari from TMZ. So that's his second attorney. He also has Shapiro. And let me tell you, when it comes to, she's like the girl in class that's so smart that sometimes when you're taking the test, you want to be sitting next to her, folks, because she got all the answers. So that's her. She's very straight to the point. She knows the books. And that's instrumental with Diddy. In fact, Diddy is surrounded by them. To his immediate left is Brian Steele. Brian Steele, when I tell you, I saw him on TV with Young Thug, but in person, he is a gentleman, a really nice guy. I have some video of him passing by, and he always speaks and talks. We talk about sports. He likes this New York hat, but he says he's not a New York fan, what have you. that's all good. I think he told me his team was Boston, so that's okay, but not quite as well as New York. But anyway, when it comes to the trial, this guy's on top of his game. He's really sharp. Let me tell you, when Brian Steele goes up there, he says something that really piques my interest. He says, "Is it fair to say?" And then he makes his point. So he's real smooth with it. But these witnesses have come on and told these stories about being hanged off the balcony, and Diddy threw them down on furniture. And then you have individuals like Brian Steele that comes up and dismantle their whole story. And then also we have Nicole Westmoreland out of Atlanta, and she has raised the bar to a high level. You should see her. And she is an African American attorney. And I think it's so beautiful. I think all young African American young girls should see her because she performs at a high level. And when she gets on that microphone, she commands the audience, and she also dissects under cross-examination anybody that gets in front of her. Anybody. Believe me, she could bring the smoke. That's how strong she is. We also have Donaldson, which is also an African-American attorney, real tall guy, bald head like myself. He's bringing bald head guys back. So guys, sign up for a bald head guy. No, I'm just joking. Anyway, he is sharp. He's rather dramatic, and he likes to put on. I often notice that when he gets on this mic stand, I notice the jury lights up because they know it's going to be a show with him. So he's amazing too. Also, one thing I'm going to tell you about him is when they were trying to remove the juror, he stood up first and he fought for Diddy. And he made the whole case for Diddy that, listen, this is the most diverse jury that we've had in 25 years, folks. 25 years he's been in this courtroom. So I see why Diddy used him. But he said, we made some progress here. But he says, Judge, if you remove this black guy, you're basically going to undermine the case and undermine the progress. You know, you remember Martin Luther King said he had a dream. So maybe this was a part of the dream. So he's saying you remove the black guy, now it's going to mar the case in some point. And I'm telling you, I was with him 100%. So then the judge said, well, no, this is a matter. Let's be clear. The gentleman was not totally honest. Let's be clear. I'm going to break down how. The judge made that point. And then Donaldson stood up again. He was fighting for his client. So after that happened, then you had Brian Steele. He stood up. And he also made a very interesting spin to why not get rid of the juror. I'll just put it in my own narrative. I'll give you a general idea, but not the exact words. He basically was saying this: you guys could have brought this up much earlier in the case, but now you've seen this fellow sitting here. He's taking notes. He's not falling asleep like maybe some have. You know, it's tough to stay awake in these trials. I saw Donald Trump sleeping throughout his trial pretty much all day. It is what it is, folks. I would have been asleep too, probably. It was so boring. But anyway, let's get back to this trial. He's saying that basically you really need to think about what you're doing here, because it almost makes it seem like somebody may have an axe to grind as to why this guy is being pulled from the jury. Maybe it could be discerned that he's leaning a certain way. That wasn't his words, but that's how I felt about what he was saying. And then you also had the lead attorney stand up, and then he gave his viewpoint as well. So they all tried to no avail because that guy is gone. He was replaced by a different juror. It's already in the media that the guy was Caucasian, so we might as well be straight up about it. Now, will that affect the entire case? Who knows? But I do think the media now is starting to wake up, because they're like, well, maybe this is a little bit bigger than Diddy. Then immediately after that, like yesterday, court is canceled. There's legitimate reasons for that, but you know how it is. When it happens, people start the rumor mill, and it's bad publicity when it happens. In my opinion, the prosecution was winning. And then this happens with this juror now people are starting to say, wait a minute, it's kind of like you see a fight and you say, okay, you guys, you duke it out in the street. But then the big guy's taking advantage of a little guy, and then he goes and grabs a plank to hit him with. You like everybody in the crowd, like, no, 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 we ain't gonna let you do that. That's too much. So that's kind of like the vibe with this case here. It's like, wait a minute, removing the juror, it was just too much to bear, folks. Just too much for my blood. But hey, listen, I'm not an attorney. I'm not the judge. I'm just telling you what I saw and what I observed. So let's even get to the case now. Like I said, I have no notes. I don't need notes. I've been in the courtroom every day. I'm interacting with all sorts of people. I get to see a lot of things and even talk to people that I would have never met in life who are close to Diddy. So, but I'm trying to give you guys a general idea. So let's talk about, we're going to get to the video, but I want to break down. I've had so many attorneys on the case. I also have my own personal team of attorneys that I deal with on a regular basis, okay, in my personal life. And they've also, I have a very good interview coming up with probably the lead civil rights attorney in this country. And I think that tells you who he is. So anyway, that's coming up, folks. Not about this case, because you don't want to touch that, but I will cover one of his civil rights cases. We're going to get to that. All right, so let's talk about this case. Number one, Diddy's charged with racketeering, right? Based on a RICO. Okay, one-man band, all right? Number two, sex trafficking with fraud, force, or coercion. Okay, you with me? Number three, sex trafficking across state lines. So what I started to realize as of yesterday is that the government they structured their case around those charges and they went through it line by line. That's what they did. That's why the last couple of days, and we're about to end for the prosecution, they basically spent the last couple of days showing that number three, sex trafficking over state lines. That's why in court since Monday, we've heard about this guy, Jules, who was basically in the room when Cassie was beaten in the video that was released by CNN. They've shown on several occasions how he was flown from New York all the way to LA. They show you how he was basically paid. Also, they show you Diddy's American Express. They show you the text messages between Jules and Cassie and between Cassie and Diddy. And also people that work for Diddy they show how they're involved in moving around the sex worker. He's actually being picked up, moved around in company vehicles. It's a big problem. And if you don't think it's a big problem, you have an issue because they're laying it out. I'm in court. I'm seeing this stuff with my own eyes. But this is what they've shown this week. And that was count number three. But if you go back directly before that, last week, you know what they were proving? They were proving number two, and they spent 4 days showing how Diddy committed fraud. Okay? So the beginning of the case, they basically brought in all these witnesses, right? They brought in Cassie. They brought in David Phillips, which was a sex worker. They brought in Mia, which was also a victim. They brought in Capricorn Clark, who basically told a movie. It was a movie, folks, the way she broke it down. They brought in Kid Cudi. They brought in David James, which was Diddy's assistant. They brought in another assistant. They brought in Derek Ferguson, who was the CFO for Diddy for so many years. He handled all the money. He broke down all the corporations. So they brought in all these people. They brought in Don Richard. They're showing all these witnesses. They're showing RICO. That's what they're trying to show. Now, don't get it wrong. That doesn't mean that he's going to be found guilty. If I had to choose today, I would say it would be a mistrial. And I have my reasons for saying that. If it was last week, it would have been a very strong mistrial, but they did get rid of a juror. And I have my own philosophy of that, but I won't get into it because I don't want the court to say, hey, buddy, you're not coming in here again. So we're going to stay cool and try to abide by the rules. The second count is sex trafficking with force, fraud, and coercion. So after they showed their RICO, looking back and going through my notes, they established a RICO. they show you, because now the defense come in, they have a strong argument. They say, listen, this is a case of domestic violence, right? Well, here's a problem, folks. Did he beat the chef? That's not his girlfriend, family member, right? Mia said she was beaten. And also Deontay Nash was beaten. He was a stylist, and he was just smacking him in the back of the head, allegedly, threw him down. He testified, so I don't even have to say allegedly. But now you're out of the scope of your domestic violence in so many regards. At least that's what I'm understanding from the attorneys that I talk to in my circle. Okay? But anyway, the RICO racketeering, they tried to show that. I don't think that they showed it enough to where, because see, this is just my opinion. This is off the record, okay? When you look at the mob movies, we're just accustomed to what we know and see in regular life. We're regular people. Most of us are, right? When you watch the movie, it's like John Gotti, he's going up against the Sopranos, let's say. They're all trying to make money more than the other group. And so now you start killing people in that group. They start killing your members. It's a war in the street, but it's not a one-man band. They took out R. Kelly with the same strategy of this RICO as a one-man band. Was R. Kelly, now listen, don't get it twisted. Anybody dealing with children, take them out of here. Lock them up, right? I'm not talking about that. That's not the case. I'm saying, though, they took him down with the RICO one-man band. That might be hard for regular people. I've been there every day, and I feel like it's a stretch. I'm just telling you what I feel. This is just my opinion. I don't represent the jury or anybody else. I'm just a one-man band here too. But it's a stretch because he wasn't making money. He was making money from tons of money from his, he's Diddy, right? But he was using these individuals. Now, when you look at the law and what's being described, then you could see, okay, because if they fine-tune, you're dealing with the system, the government, and they structured this thing to where they can make it up as they go. They write a new law, new bill, and basically, from what the attorneys have explained to me, they would have a guy like John Gotti, right? And I'm just using him as a public figure, no pun intended. Let's say he's up in Australia somewhere, but he's calling the shots. Or maybe a guy that's in prison, he's calling the shots. And all the low guys are just moving the weight and the drugs, all this, and doing the crimes. And he looks like, John Gotti hasn't done anything wrong. So they created this RICO. Well, actually, the RICO started with Jack Johnson, which was a black man, where the Mann Act was. So let's just stay clear. So to get John Gotti, now you hit him with the conspiracy. Now you can reach him because now you're factoring in his association, and you're showing that he's the mastermind behind this criminal enterprise. So that's what's happening here in the case of Diddy. And there's a lot of crimes that they have highlighted. And believe me, the government has made some of these things very clear. Some of the things you may have been misled, like, for instance, they had the officer that responded to Kid Cudi's burglary and also the detective that responded to his arson. But when it came to the burglary, it was called in as a burglary to dispatch. But the officer came in, he testified that on the police report, it was only dictated as or written as trespassing. So there's a lot of things like that could affect the case because it wasn't necessarily a straight up burglary as many just express it as. So those are some of the things. Also, when it came to the arson, it was a woman's DNA that was found. So that left a hole there. Even though they pretty much painted that Diddy was a part of it, they never tied it down to show who the woman was. It left enough room there to where someone could rightly say, well, maybe Diddy wasn't the one who did it. Maybe Kid Cudi had a girlfriend who had a problem with him because he actually testified that something like this had happened before. He actually had the fingerprint cards from a previous incident. But on the stand, Kid Cudi said, before this incident happened with Diddy and Cassie, when I started seeing her And after that, I never had any more problems. But I see a discrepancy there, but maybe it could be fine tuned with more questions. But anyway, let's just go through count two: sex trafficking with force, fraud, and coercion. They show you the force with Cassie in the hotel being beaten, right? So that's one form of the force. She's being, he's trying to drag her back to a room or what have you. And then also you see him throw a vase at her. All of these things are happening. Cassie comes on the stand and she says that this is actually a freak off, that perhaps Jules is there in the room. In the video, you see an officer, a security guard, respond to the incident. He comes out of the elevator. He seemed like he's starstruck with Diddy. You actually see him smiling. Well, he's the mastermind behind the video that you and I actually saw from CNN. Why? He's currently a police officer, but he took a video of the original video with his cell phone, and he said he did it so that he could go home and show it to his wife. And while he's filming the video, you'll see his shoes are very shiny. He has on those patent leather shoes. He zooms in to show his shoes. So that's a part of that video too. So that's the reason why this video ultimately at some point came out, allegedly, right? CNN presented it, I believe, first. But in court, they actually bring in the security guard that responded to this event. His name is Eddie Garcia, Spanish fella. He tells us he came to work that day at 2:00. He heard about the previous incident with Cassie that day. But here's the thing, folks. This week, they came in with they had a chart. On the chart, it showed you people, places, things, and times. And so let's say, for instance, the event that happened with Cassie, this freak off with Cassie, Diddy, and Jules, where she is ultimately beaten down the hallway. For that event, they would have a box that says who were in attendance at this meeting. They call this freak off a meeting, and they would have the names of the three individuals. They tell you what date it happened, the time. They also, in the background now, this is the government, folks. Do not get it twisted. They're not here to play games with anybody. They don't bring cases that they don't think they can win. But they show us the chart. And I'm using this as an example, this event, because everybody know about the video pretty much. Every juror that they tried to bring in, only maybe a few said they never saw the video. And my antennas went up because I'm like, you didn't see the video? Okay, Jack, you didn't see the video. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Behind the chart, let me tell you what the government do. They're showing you Diddy's American Express. They're showing you his hotel records. Not only the hotel records for that day, they have his hotel records from hotels across the land that he stayed at, because most of these witnesses testify they were in freak-offs weekly. Sometimes, I think Cassie said up to 4 men in 4 days. So you're going through all of this, and she claims there was no sleep and there were a lot of different drugs floating around, okay? And we're going to get to this video. I was in court when the video was played, so we're drawing up to the video, but I'm trying to give you guys some context so you can understand when I get to the video what I'm talking about, right? So basically, they substantiate all of that, but guess what else they do? This guy, Eddie Garcia, that was working at the hotel, oh yeah, the Spanish fella, he talked about how Diddy paid to make the video go away. And this raised a red flag for me. You know why? Because they had previously, in this case, asked for a mistrial, because when Kid Cudi's situation arose, there were 2 fingerprints that were taken from a bottle that was used for a Molotov cocktail to blow up Kid Cudi's car. Folks, the fingerprints went away. And the prosecution was insinuating very strongly that Diddy had something to do with those fingerprints going away. Yes, this is what they were saying. And this is why the defense stood up and they basically objected. And that led to the request for a mistrial, which was denied. Okay, it was denied. So At any rate, in this particular case, Diddy, it came out that he paid $100,000. Um, the manager of Eddie Garcia said that they would make that video go away, the original that was in the Intercontinental Hotel, that he would take 50,000 to make that disappear. And Diddy agreed, they all agreed, but they ultimately were able to get $100,000 out of Diddy to make that go away. Now, that's where you get into this whole organized crime field that starts to get really, really scary for anybody that's involved in that type of activity. So, anyway, the last 2 days, they've been breaking that down and showing you all the text messages between Eddie Garcia, between Diddy. They show you the call logs. They're calling each other back and forth. And all of this jives with the testimony of the individuals that they have brought in there. Now, here's the other thing. We're talking about force here, and they substantiated that in many ways with Dawn Rashad. She talks about how Diddy had came out and told them, listen, you guys can end up dead. Where I'm from, you end up dead if you run your mouth, basically. And that's when it started to get a little murky. You're threatening people's lives. This is what they're trying to paint, right? Not my idea. She testified to this, although under cross-examination, she somewhat fell apart in many different aspects. I don't believe she was the strongest witness by far, but there has been a ring of truth in this case throughout. So the force part, beating the chef, beating Deontay Nash in the back of the head, throwing him down, beating Cassie. Jane, also, Mia talks about even being abused on a higher level when it comes to sex, right? So this is all force that the government has been laying down real heavy and thick, and people are just trying to act like the government has been in here playing games. I don't know what they're looking at. But anyway, doesn't mean it's going to stick, right? There's a whole argument for that, and that's how I'm going to end. But we've covered sex trafficking with force. But it says or fraud or coercion. The government went through each one. They're checking every box, folks. They went into coercion. They showed how Cassie, right? Cassie came on. She was a beautiful girl. She was in this relationship with Ryan Leslie. He had a pretty good hit out. I remember his song, right? Diddy was introduced to Cassie by him. You could actually go to YouTube and find a video of the actual introduction. But Diddy was feeling her. He was feeling her strong, folks. So he ended up putting they called the Mac down to her, and they became an item. She had a 10-year, 10-contract deal, and she put out her first album, and the argument from the prosecution is that she never put out another album. And so basically they're painting the picture with coercion is that he lured her in and then cut off her money stream because she was a model. She also did guest appearances where she would be paid to show up, several thousands of dollars just to show up. That's what, remember Paris Hilton, I think she started that whole wave with showing up and getting paid top dollars. Or maybe it goes back before. But here's their argument for coercion. He basically locked her into these drugs and into the whole freak off weekly with all these men going through different crises with her own body and all this. She testified. She told, they brought in Deontay Nash because he was the one that basically said that on her 29th birthday, she did not want to do a freak off, and Diddy made her do a freak off anyway, people. Get in their room and do that freak off. Yeah, that's what came out basically. So that's the part about coercion. You cut off her money stream. Now she's dependent on you. He's paid for her. She had a Jaguar. She testified that Diddy got her a Jaguar. She also had an apartment on the 17th floor out west where some of these incidents allegedly happened. Diddy was paying for it. Capricorn Clark came in and said that Diddy was pretty much paying for the entire staff. They had staff housing. But dig this, the reason why Capricorn Clark told Cassie to get a burner phone is because Diddy was paying for both of their phone bills every month, folks. So he had control of their entire life. So what happens when you are in that type of situation and you don't feel like you can go out and make a dime anymore, or you'll be banned from the industry? You also get the clout from being around Diddy. This is Diddy, folks. The Diddy changed a generation. Okay, so that's where the coercion came from. Also, with this gal Jane, she basically came in and told the same story as Cassie. Now, before I get to the part about how they tried to prove fraud last week for 4 days, I'm going to break it down for you guys, right? Here's the thing you need to keep in mind where this case is a little bit shady, and I'm going to tell it. Whether they like it or not, I'm going to tell it. Cassie, Deontay Nash, Mia, several of these individuals that have come to the stand and testified, they're still talking. So they asked Deontay Nash, when the last time you talked to Cassie? Oh, I was advising her on her outfits. What? You guys are all coming to the stand. This man's life is on the line, and he did some terrible things. But it should be by the book, right? How are they able to just be talking? Because who's to say people are not comparing notes or saying, hey, what did they ask you? Oh, okay, I'm nervous. I'm not saying that happened, but the fact that you allow that to happen, it affects his overall sustainability for having a solid trial, in my opinion, as a regular Joe in the courtroom. So what effect will that have on the jury? I do not know, but they're still talking. In fact, Deontay Nash was like, he told us, oh, she was in labor last night. Ooh, 2 days later, I found out she had the baby. But they're all witnesses telling a similar story about the same events, folks. How are they able to talk to each other? I'm just saying right is right, whether you like what I'm saying or not. This is my channel. I'm going to talk about it, right? So now, that's the coercion, okay? The government went through, like, they could have just said, we're going to show force or we'll just show coercion. No, the government don't play no games. They showed force, coercion. Now, let me show you how they showed fraud. Diddy meets Jane Doe. Jane Doe is in a relationship with one of Diddy's old friends. Also, her girlfriend, Jane Doe's girlfriend, was also seeing Diddy, but they broke up. And so when they met, she kind of stayed in the background, but she said that her friend married a guy from overseas. So that's when she said, okay, I'll see Diddy. Jane Doe starts to see Diddy. Diddy wines and dines her. She's a very beautiful woman, I must say. He takes her to Turks and Caicos for 9 days. They leave Turks and Caicos, folks, and go to the Bahamas for another 5. Like, that's some different level. Your average Joe can't do something like that, right? So she's being wined and dined. She feels like she's the pretty princess of the World Union Association of the People of the United States of America, right? That's what she's feeling. She's on one. Okay. Eventually, folks, she gets locked into the freak-offs. Yeah. They made a love contract. Sounds weird to me. You making a contract? If it's not a marriage contract, like, what are we doing here, folks? Love contract. Diddy agreed allegedly to pay her $10,000 rent every month, folks. Diddy's still paying her $10,000 a month, folks. She testified to that now. Not only that, she showed up in court with attorneys. Guess who's paying for her legal? Diddy is still paying for her legal, folks. I'm telling you what it is. It's what it is, folks. But dig this, right? Let me show you how they prove fraud with her. The defense tried so hard. Agnifilo 2 Fridays ago. And guys, I have no notes. I'm going right off the top of the head. That's how attentive I am about this case or any case that you'll get out of me. So if you like my material, you want to just hear the facts, it's not Doesn't have all the whistles and bells. Hoo, hoo, hoo. Not all that. I'm just giving you the facts. And if you can just stand it, you'll be in a better place at understanding the trial. Agnifilo, 2 Fridays ago, he stood up. He says, listen, Your Honor. He always says, Your Honor. Oh, thanks for the super chat. Mashana, I appreciate you. You're so wonderful. You're so amazing. Thank you for locking in with me. And you guys reach out to me via email. I would definitely kick it with you. Believe that. Everybody's important here. So check this out. He stood up. He says, listen, the prosecution is trying to introduce these 2 exhibits, 331, DX 331. I even remember the exhibits, folks. I don't know. Maybe I'm a little different. Okay. In the exhibits, Jane Doe writes a note to herself, and she's talking about Diddy. She says, he's a pathological liar. So the prosecution is using that to establish that her frame of mind and that she believed. I remember Comey saying in her mind, she believed that he was lying to her, defrauding her, using a material fact to defraud her, and basically lying. Let me explain how. On several occasions, she said that Diddy invited her to come and wine and dine. And pay attention, because everybody in life is dating at some point, right? You all been on a date. A lot of times that leads to kids, right? That's how we all got here at some point. So he invites her to come to dinner. She's flying in, right? And it's just going to be me and you. She often talked about she just wanted to cuddle with Diddy. She wanted to do all of this romantic. She's like one of those romance type of gals, right? She would get there, and Diddy would be like, okay, let's bring in Paul. Get Paul on the line. Let's have a freak off. Boom. Oh, see, this is what the government is showing. He was defrauding her, because this is where Jane is more dangerous for the defense than Cassie. Let me explain. Cassie starts off as a relationship. So you could argue that this is a relationship. Stay out of people's relationship, government. The government has wisened up by the time they brought Jane on the stand, because they make it very clear from the beginning that this is an open relationship, and Diddy tells her right off the gate, I have multiple women. The first time they do, shortly after, Diddy gives her $10,000, and the prosecutor is like, well, why did he give it to you? Oh, she says, oh, just because. So now they're painting that there's money coming involving with sex. Another time he gives her $20,000. He gives her $20,000 for her furniture. He's paying her rent, but she has to basically do these sex acts with these strangers, and that's where the problem lies. They're attaching, even though he's not per se giving her, like David Phillips, who was a sex worker, and also the Punisher that we see on CNN. And I don't know why they have him on CNN while the case is still active, but it just seemed weird to me. I saw him on the stand, then like a week later, he's out talking to the public about the case. I felt like it was a gag order. Now, I'm not a lawyer. It's just weird to me to see that happen when you have a guy, any guy, because anybody could be sitting in that box one day, when you're fighting for your life and it's like the whole world is coming after you. It should be some formal way of dealing with this without having all the witnesses talking to each other and also going on these big networks talking about the case. It's strange to me. Anyway, they testified where Diddy and Cassie, primarily Cassie was the one handing the money. David Phillips says he was getting between $3,000 to $4,000. He was originally hired through Cowboys and Angels, which is like a network for hiring male dancers, right? That you can go online and pick out whatever you want. So they had chosen to call this company. They sent a guy over named David. He was supposed to receive $200 just to dance, but he testified. I saw him on the stand. He said he went in and Cassie was so beautiful. He was like, he made it seem like he was getting a super treat, almost like he would have done it for free or what have you. He said he walked in, he was looking for the females, and there was no females, people. Cassie told him My husband wants to watch, and he's not gay. So it made it very clear there's nothing that, the only things that came out that a little weird was this whole thing about release on the stomach and they playing around with it. But we could get into that later. So anyway, he talked about how Diddy would be in the corner, maximizing himself to the fullest, to the third power. I'm trying to say it in a nice way. So much so that at times it would be distracting, but it moved into this arena to where he's getting 3 to 4 thousand just to have relations with her. So now that's a problem, folks. How can you explain he says he's getting paid to have sex in America? How do you get around that? You can say what you want to, but the government is not playing any games here. All right. So the guy, the Punisher, he came on. Now he's very unique because he tells a story. Usually everybody's saying that Cassie was the one paying. She would often pay them cash when it was over. And I'm going off memory. The Punisher says that he was receiving $800 and also he received $1,200 and $2,000. He couldn't decipher what made the difference in the amount. He made it seem like he was just happy to be along for the ride. But he's the one that tries to tie Diddy to the actual getting paid. So what he says is one time the arrangement, the sex was so great that Diddy stood up and he had the money in hand and he slammed the money on the bed and said, "This shit is great." And so that's the point where the government is trying to say Diddy paid him because he says he even went on the big network and said that he collected that money. That's his testimony, people. So at any rate, when it comes to the fraud part of it, to make it very clear for you, they're saying that he would tell Jane, we're going to go out on a date, but then that would turn into a freak off. And that happened on several occasions. So that's what they're trying to paint. So that covers that. So now we get to point number 3. I've covered 1 and 2, and I'm going to cover 3, and I'll be out of here. They spent the last couple days proving 3, and it really triggered me to thinking they went systematically through this case, but most of us are just sitting there processing information, writing notes. We don't realize how sharp the government is. The last couple of days, they've been showing, and listen, people are coming and going in this video. Don't get it twisted. This trial could very well be a mistrial. For him to win it, it's going to take a cold day in hell. Believe me, I've been there every day, even through the jury selection. It's going to be tough, but there are chances for him to have a couple people that'll dig in their heels and say he's not guilty. It's very, very likely. I think it was even more likelier earlier this week, and you can do the math as to why I'm saying that. So let me break down the last point here, the last charge that's very interesting. Sex trafficking across the state lines. Now, this is what is interesting. I've been watching all these channels, and no one, not one person, has really hit the point of why they showed the sex video. I was in the courtroom. I could hear what was happening. And then I said, the marshal stood up and, well, he was already standing. He says, "Judge, we can hear what's happening," because they did not want to hear. Sometimes when you're sitting in the audience, you can actually see the lawyer screens, right? I want to make this clear that I did hear some portions of the video. I think any of us that were sitting in there and have good hearing would hear that. Okay, that's fair to say. In the words of Brian Steele, is that fair to say, folks? Right? That's a pretty unique phrase. Anyway, I'm not saying I saw the video that was in the on the monitor with the attorneys. I'm not saying that. But I'm going to tell you what I thought, what I'm thinking personally was showed in the video, right? I'm going to tell you that, okay? So let's make it clear. I'm not saying I saw anything on a video because that's going to get me in hot water. I want to make it clear, right? So we're clear, folks? Okay. Let me preface this by giving you some context on what happened. They spent the last 2 days showing this guy Jules as an example. He's flying in. Remember, he's the guy he's the worker that was allegedly there when Cassie was beaten. So the government put together these charts that I told you about. They're flying this guy from JFK. They show you his flight number, people. They show you his name. They show you his number. They show you everything about this guy. They show you his itinerary, and he flies into LAX. So the government is showing you the text messages of the arrangement and why he's coming. He's actually talking on several occasions. They mix it up a bit, but they have text messages between Cassie, Diddy, Jules, and they're planning for this event. Nobody's expecting that the feds is going to come knocking someday. So people are talking and interacting freely. Okay. Not only that, they show you how much his tickets were, who paid for it. They show you Diddy's American Express. They show you that the company is paying for some of these things, because they show you that even though it goes on an American Express, they'll show you in the background the company is paying for certain things. Diddy is paying for another. The government is showing you that the hotel has this guy, Jules, walking through the lobby of the hotel on metadata. In fact, when the agent came up, let me tell you how scary this is. When the agent came up, they say, how do you know who was in this meeting? Because on your chart, you have the people who are involved. So in other words, for the freak off, that's between Diddy, Cassie, and Jules. On the chart in this box, it has who attended the meeting. The meeting is actually a freak off, right? Allegedly. So they have Diddy, Cassie, Jules. They asked the agent, how do you know? You know what the agent said? We only put what's available on the video. So they don't even do hearsay. They don't put who's in that meeting because someone said Cassie said they were there. They're using video evidence. They don't play games when it comes to the government, people. So they show you all of this to establish. They're trying to paint the picture of this last point, number 3, this last charge, sex trafficking across state lines. So that's what they're showing. Now, why did they show this freaky video to all the people that were involved, like the jury and also the attorneys and the judge? You want to know why they showed the video? They simply want to show that this guy, Jules, was hired to come and have sex. He had done it many times, and others had done it many times. They was simply showing he was paid for it, and they show you on the video that he did the do. And not only that, this is my opinion. I'm not saying I saw a video. I'm not saying anything like that. My opinion here, off record, right? They show in the video how massive this guy is, perhaps. These guys are humongous. Like, they show aggression. I think this is my personal opinion, because they only have a certain amount of time to show the video, and they showed 3 clips, right? And I think that the prosecution and the defense were allotted a certain amount of time to show certain parts of the video, because they don't want to show this stuff too long. And I think that the prosecution showed their portion, and I think the defense were able to show their portion. I think the defense would have been trying to show that Cassie could have been having some moments of enjoyment. Who knows? My opinion. But I think they showed that this was more than just a sexual encounter. By the sound of what I heard, and like I said, I'm not saying I saw anything. It was more like an aggression, like when people watch the type of porn that is like extreme. So I'll leave it there. In my opinion, I think through some of the clips that were shown, they would have shown drugs, because the government is checking all the boxes. So that's why the video, they're not just showing you the video just so you can see a freak off, folks. They were showing the video to show Jules was contracted. He was also the witness that was there during the beatdown. He was paid for an act, and guess what? They show you on the video that he did it and that they were involved with it. The government does not play games. Now, the defense is probably going to come in and destroy most of this, but how successful they will be, we do not know. We don't know, folks. But I will tell you this, and this is what I've learned overall, and I want to leave you with this idea, this concept. This is what I know from the government, and I'm very impressed with how they did this. They brought in all of the victims, per se. There was number 3 that never showed up. You know, online you have the internet sleuths who try to paint a story, whether she's this or that. That's neither here nor there. Although in the beginning of the case, they did say there were 5 victims, we've only seen 3. 1 didn't show up. I don't know what happened to number 5, but it's in my notes. I remember that day. I'm pretty sharp. They brought on the witnesses and they brought on these victims. But here's the problem with the case as I've sat there. Most of them were shredded to pieces. They tell this story about Diddy and these freak-offs, and they didn't want to do it with strangers. Now, with Jane, here's the most damning thing about Jane that's different than the rest of the victims. They showed emails, text messages from Jane to Diddy 2 years ago before he was even arrested or what have you, where she's actually telling him, I don't want to do these freak-offs, these strange men. So she's actually saying this to him during the live time back then. So to me, that has more weight, more impact. It's not like she just came to the stand and came up with a bullshit story. Okay? Now, when it came to the witness, I'm going to give you an example. It came to the witness, Bonner. She was involved. In fact, the defense, under cross-examination, I think she was cross-examined by the awesome Nicole Westmoreland. I think she was framed as also Cassie's drug partner, almost like, I think the wordage was she would find the drugs and Cassie would be the person buying it. That came out in court. Whereas the prosecutors are trying to say Cassie didn't have any money and that Diddy was supplying all the drugs. This girl, Bonner, who was her friend, told a different story. That's a problem, okay? That's a problem. But anyway, this girl, Bonner, is the reason why they asked for the second mistrial. Okay, I'm about to wrap this up, guys. Bonner said that on September 26, 2016, I'm going off from memory, and I guarantee you I'm correct, that Diddy came in and he hung her off of the balcony. She was interviewed maybe 24, 27 times by the feds, and every time she told a different story. In fact, she did not make a credible witness because her answer was always, I don't know. Can you rephrase the question? I don't know. At any rate, she said that Diddy did this on September 26, 2016. Okay, under cross-examination, Nicole Westmoreland, she showed that Diddy was staying at the Trump Plaza in New York City during the same damn time. That's a big problem. It's almost as significant to me as the glove in the O.J. Simpson case with Johnny Cochran. It's going to be a point of contention for as long as you hear about Diddy's case for eternity, because it raises a serious problem like, are they making these stories up? Well, that came out in court too. Remember I told you that Cassie, listen, let's stop here, okay? I'm trying to help you guys understand things about this case that they're not telling you in the media, all right? And this will probably be my last time breaking this down. So it's very important that you get what I'm saying. You have to get my drift here, right? This girl and Cassie have been talking throughout, right? Perhaps. Well, let's just not say her. Several of these individuals have been still talking, but they claim in court they haven't talked about the trial. That seems weird to me. My best friend, I think if I was in a situation, I would ask him like, hey, what did they ask you? Oh, were you nervous? Oh, what do you do? It's just human nature. But they said, no, they've been talking, but they don't talk about this case. Okay. What came out in court by way of Nicole Westmoreland under cross-examination of this girl, Bonner, is that after Cassie filed her lawsuit, that's when this girl jumped on the bandwagon. This came out in court. Her and Cassie are having conversations. Well, did it happen at the hotel? Did he hang me over the balcony at the hotel? Oh no, say the apartment. My apartment had a balcony. Bro, like, shut this down. This is crazy to me. This came out in court. They're comparing notes, making up stories. And mind you, this is the same day that they said Ray J was a drug dealer, but they never brought up a picture of the Ray J that we know. But again, this came out in court, people. So here's my ultimate point. Most of these victims, I can't question what happened to them. I never question victims. Everybody have their story. And if somebody's being abused, it needs to be addressed, and you need to lock up the person. But you need to lock them up under the right charges, is what I will say. But here's my ultimate point, and I'll go. These victims and witnesses that have came in, many people can question their motive. They all seem to be getting money or have received money at some point. If I were running this prosecution, there's no way I would close out without bringing in the chief of staff, Christina Coram, who was the person they really tied her to running the company and also being involved in his personal life. And she was also the problem solver. So she would say when Diddy would beat the girls, she would be involved. They show all of that. Well, what about Diddy's inner circle, right? They haven't brought in any of these security guards. See, it's almost like when you have John Gotti and you have him in, you're bringing in people from the outskirts, but you don't bring in his bodyguard. You don't bring in his driver. You don't bring in the chef that's hearing him on the phone every day. You do not tighten up the case that way. But let me tell you how they accomplished the same thing without doing that. So this is where we're going to talk about the last 2 days, and I'm going to go. What they did, instead of and also why you bring in sex workers and you don't bring in Jules. Jules is the one that's there for the video that we're all interested in. Like, why wouldn't you bring Jules in? Well, let me tell you, this is the unique part, folks, and you need to listen to me. And I'm going to still cover this case. I'm going to cover many cases. I just want to be accurate, and I want you guys to be able to see through all the smoke in the media. If I'm wrong, you could call me out and I'll come and correct myself. But that's how accurate I want to be with this information. So here's the thing. They didn't bring these people in because they have them all tied in with these two agents that came in this week. These agents they establish all of the text messages going back between Diddy's security, between the chief of staff. So basically the government's saying we don't even need these people because we have them tied down on the paper. So in other words, instead of hearing them come in, give a story, and under cross-examination fall apart, the government has laid out all these facts in written form, in charts. I mean, it's so sophisticated, you could probably hear one of those guys' heart beating on their freaking chart. That's how serious it is. That's how deep, that's how in tune the government was into the whole operation. And what I learned, I believe that Jane said the government interviewed her and she went and did another freak off. So the government is much different than your local police department. You commit a crime, let's say you beat your wife. And you should never do that, by the way. But let's say it happens. They start their investigation at that point, right? When it happens, the government, from what I'm seeing in this case, they'll investigate you for years. Diddy actually, it came out in court many years ago when he had this incident going on with Suge Knight or whatever. It was after Diddy had died, but Diddy made a statement. He was like, the government's out here investigating me, and we're out here trying to figure out who killed my homeboy, talking about Biggie. So even Diddy knew he was being investigated, probably not at the magnitude that we've learned now. So the reason why they didn't bring in Jules and subject him to a cross-examination, they didn't bring in the maybe the defense will bring them in. I don't know. But I do know the government really went hard. Now, in the defense area, they used the chart in a magnificent way. They took this chart that was very damning and they turned it around on the prosecutors. Let me explain and then I'll go. In the chart, or throughout this case, there were various emails. The chart made you think that they showed all of the text exchanges and emails between Diddy, Cassie, and all the team members. But let me explain this. The defense came up there and they said, pull up this email exchange here, or this text. And in this exchange, Cassie is saying, oh, I want all of those big D's to lick them from top to bottom. Woo! Damn. Cold-blooded, right? And so the defense says, why didn't you put that on the chart? So then we started to see they want to put Diddy's dirt on the chart, the government, but they didn't put any of Cassie's dirt. And actually, they explained that it was the trial team. The agent explained that the trial team is the one that put it together. So, but they did not point out. There's another point where Diddy says, this could be our last freak off. Cassie says, I don't want this to be our last freak off. I want this to be our first freak off for the rest of our lives. Guess what? That trial team for the prosecutors, for the government, they didn't put that on the chart. So the defense did a good job showing that this is a very biased chart. It's not showing all the facts about this case, folks. So when it comes to this video, the video is to show that the deal was sealed. You ordered this sex worker, he flew. And not only that, they've also, with Cassie, and I think she was encouraged to do so, I don't know, her last few words on the stand, they asked her why she was doing so much, because she had talked about these things happening to her, 2 men using the bathroom on her. You get my drift, right? And they asked her, like, what made whatever? She says, because I was a sex worker. So she's also framed herself as a sex worker. Jane Doe came in, and I think ultimately she actually helped the defense more than she helped the prosecutors, even though she was a prosecution witness. Let me explain. When she came in, she talked about how Diddy's still paying for her rent. He's still paying her legal fees. And she took all the brunt of ordering these sex workers. So in other words, she was showing that, no, it wasn't necessarily Diddy behind it. I was ordering sex workers too. She wrote Paul and said, Paul, now Paul's a sex worker, a strange man, right? Paul, I miss you. Or she told Diddy, I'm missing Paul. Let's get Paul here. Or she would notice Diddy getting sad and she would order a 3-man night SmackDown, or whatever they had these fancy names for it. I say SmackDown. But it's almost like a wrestling fest. So there you have it, folks. These videos that everybody's talking about, the ultimate goal was to show the jury that they ordered the sex worker and he delivered on the promise. They flew him in. That the enterprise, because when they had Derek Ferguson, who was the CFO of the company, he showed that there were various companies, and at some point, they pulled up one that was called Combs Enterprises. And then you saw Uncle Paulie. You even saw, I believe, Mia was on it. So they're showing that this was a criminal. They're trying to show that this is a criminal enterprise. I say all that to say this before I end. All of this has been presented very well by the government, but Diddy has some of the best attorneys that money can buy. And they've been doing a lot to refute it. I personally have been in the courtroom every day. I have the government at 60%. I have Diddy at 40%. When the defense come on, that number can possibly change. I thought the government would be at 90%. I thought it would be so damning. But when you mix in the juror going away, there's a problem now with another juror. Court yesterday has been canceled, adjourned for another day, and people are coming up with rumors saying, oh, There was an alien involved. These people are just out of touch with life. Anything for a click, folks. They'll just tell you anything. So with all of this drama going down, I think that it's very likely that this case, not everyone is going to see it the same way. It's not a cut and dry guilty case. I do think it is quite possible that the RICO might go away, but maybe when it comes to the other charges, we'll just have to see how they stick. But you never know, folks. The government has laid out such a case. Maybe people don't see it the way I see it, and maybe because the average person is not out here doing these things, that they have been internally impacted by all of this constant charges that have been dropped in this case, folks. So there you have it. I gave you a general synopsis of the entire trial to try to help you understand why they showed the sex videos. And from what I heard, it was brutal. It wasn't like a happy moment. So, yeah, I'll leave you with that. It's from the little bit that whatever. But I don't know. I don't know exactly what was seen, and I can only speak on what I may have heard, and that may not have been accurate from that point because they were trying so hard not to let us see it or hear what was said. So I'll leave it at that. But the government makes their points, and the key to this thing is you do not want them coming for you, because they're going to have stuff about you from 20 years ago that you thought you threw out in the trash can on Sycamore Street on a Friday night. Yeah, they're going to have it, and they're going to cook you like a can of beans, All right, let's go to the comments, and I have to get to New York City, folks. Thank you, Mel. I got to look. Ooh, these comments are going fast. All right, one of my moderators, I have to show me how to slow down the comments. I don't have time to catch up with how this thing works right now. I'll be back and forth to New York so much. Okay, Mashona, maybe you could show me. Thank you for all the tuning in. Please like, share. Thank you, Mashona, Michelle. Thank you, Mel. I got to look at everything from the beginning. Have a good day. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Miss Kelly, the attorney, had 70-30, Mel. Okay. Yeah, she's stronger than me for the prosecution, and she's a legal analyst. So, yeah, I'm telling you, the government, it's going to be tough to beat them. I mean, they are cooking. It's like a Thanksgiving dinner right now. But again, I think that some of the jurors, from what I've observed, and I won't explain it because they're going crazy about talking about the jury, so I'm not going to do it. But believe me, don't be surprised if this is a mistrial. Okay. And listen, the average Joe on this trial, they don't know about this type of lifestyle. This is big money type of living. The average Joe, if you don't have money, you think a woman's going to come in there and do all this crazy stuff with you. Brother, if you don't have $10, she's going to tell you to get out of here, which she probably should. So this is big league activity, and you're trying to get everyday Joes to determine the life of the man. It's going to be interesting. Okay. A lot of support. Thank you, Mel. Appreciate you taking the time to explain the details. Yeah, you know why I did this? Because you guys be hitting me up in my emails and also saying, listen, you're helping me navigate through this. So I said, look, well, let me give them the real deal. So I did it for you guys that really support me, my core team here. I wanted you guys to approach the end of this trial and be like, okay, this is why this happened. This is why that happened. You want to be informed. And I'm not bullshitting you guys either. These people make stuff up. Like, I'm not saying everybody does, but they make up stuff like Kamala Harris and Barack Obama was on the stand. Like, God knows, man, what's wrong with you guys? All right, Rodney, she threatened to kill someone. Yeah, absolutely. Cassie threatened to kill one of her friends. She was like, and we'll bury you, because he had a video about her that someone had sent. One of the freak-offs videos had been released to the friend, and he wasn't letting her see it right away. She was like, I'll kill you, and I'll have someone bury you. So the prosecutors try to paint the girls as sweet angels, and maybe they are, people. Maybe they are sweet angels, but we heard videos that were not so sweet. We heard a lot of stuff that was not so sweet. So you have to take this case with a grain of salt, and you have to factor in. And I hate to tell you guys this, but we're living in America, right? A place where we all understand the past is pretty interesting. And also, we have a new administration, so life is very interesting about how things are going. But the way that the people at large look at a case is not the way it's processed through people of a certain culture. And that's where the issue lies. People are watching this because they want to see. You cannot walk away from this case and say that this case won't affect, like R. Kelly's case, they sat Diddy in the same seat. And I think he's deserving of a lot of it. But if this turns into some sort of mechanism of the government, then now your local mechanic, he has Henrique working for him, and Billy Joe and Bob and Tuesday, right? Charlie West. Now he's telling them different things. Boom, he gets hit with a RICO. You don't have millions to fight an attorney. So this is where we have to be careful, because this RICO is like carbon monoxide. It takes you out and you still won't understand. At the end of the day, Diddy would never know what hit him if they charge him with racketeering. Because when I talk to different attorneys, or if you don't believe me, go look at various channels, put in the attorneys that are talking about this case, and they'll tell you something completely different. Oh, he's going to walk. There's no RICO. Then you have another 20 attorneys saying, yeah, this is RICO. They proved it on week 1. So there's the problem. And it's a big problem, folks. All right, so I'm about to wrap up here. See, Nike said the streets keep saying KK will not flip on Combs, hence not testifying. She may end up, yeah, quite possible. Some of this case is sealed. All right, thank you guys for the support here. I've been going on for an hour and a half, way overdue. But you can't say I told you, folks. I gave you a lot of the meat of this trial. And I explained to you why they're showing the video. They're showing you, they're proving the sex trafficking. How do you get around it? We have to see what the defense say. Yeah, we have to see what they say. All right, we have a few trolls in the audience. We need the trolls, people. They reflect a part of society that needs a hug and maybe a baba and some warm milk. Especially anytime you come on and you want to be abusive to anyone, that tells everybody you have a serious problem in your life. But we're not here to judge anyone. But just try to cool it a little bit with all the name calling. And definitely don't go around putting your hands on people, because we're not going to go for that, especially women and children. But you shouldn't do it to anyone. And you can tell by the comments. I don't know if these are real people, other channels just being funny, or bots. But it tells you these people are messed up in the head, some of them, coming in on somebody else's channel. And I see it at large. They come on people's channels talking junk. Like, who? I don't really care, man. I'm very comfortable in my life, so it's not a big deal. But don't be harassing people in the audience, or else we're going to throw you out of here on your head. It is what it is, folks. All right, so I'm done. I'm out of here. I hope this helped you to understand certain parts. If it did, like the video, share it, subscribe. I will be covering some very interesting footage for you guys today. I don't want to tell people what's going on, because then there's going to be more competition for me. Why not enjoy the moment? All right. So, guys, I'm heading to New York City to cover some stuff for you guys. It's going to be nice today. Remember, today's a big day, so it's going to be a lot of drama. I'm going to be in the thick of it. It's tough to be out there in the street. You can't find a bathroom to save your life. You got to walk 5 blocks to use the bathroom. You got to pay the guy a few dollars under the table just to get in the bathroom. It's just pretty interesting in New York City. So I'm doing this for my core subscribers, the watchers, and we're going to really grow this thing. We're going to keep at it. and I'm going to keep bringing you guys the facts. And again, be respectful, especially for the men. We have so many guys online now, these tough guys, they're talking about somebody else's daughter. Like you can go around and abuse women, women are trash. See, that's how we end up with these crazy situations. And that's why these girls are out here strung out on the street because guys don't care. They'll give them a drink with some bullshit drug in it. Now your daughter is off and gone. She was in college today. She took a drink from an idiot that wants to be involved in some sort of sex trafficking or human trafficking. Next time you see your daughter, she's strung out on drugs. So you have to talk to your kids. But like, who's creating these guys, these tough guys online? They out here saying it's okay to go around and grape women, like because they're maybe from a different walk of life or something. You guys got to be out of your rabbit mind. But anyway, it is what it is. There's nothing wrong. And I'm going to tell you, I don't need to work for somebody. I'm pretty advanced in my life. And I want to tell the young kids out there, you can be successful in life. And so what? People might call you a cornball. They may call you whatever, but they won't call you a felon. All right? So dig that. Because all it takes is for you young guys, like in your teenagers. I know a lot of the females that follow me, they have young sons, right? Young daughters, right? I see it happening in my family, and I try to talk to them. But all it takes, no one ever told me this. So tell it to your kids, folks. Chaos is very simple. It starts off as just one little drop, one little whirlwind, and now you have a hurricane on your hands. So you could be in a car riding with Tom, Dick, and Harry. One of them have drugs on them in the car. Police stop. Now you're locked into going downtown with a drug charge. Now your parents don't have the money to fight the case for you. Now you're trying to settle a deal with the system or give some attorney $500 an hour when you didn't even know Harry had the drugs on him. But this is how it goes in America and anywhere else, maybe. I don't know. But that's why we need to change the image in this country or around the world and help the young people find a better way because so you see what happens when you try to start telling people a better way of life. So I'm going to peace out. That's not a mistake, folks. Now I'm a little bit concerned. So I'm out of here. See, talking some bullshit. They let me go. Like who shut me off? I'm out. Peace. I'm still gonna cover it. I'll go out there on the street and start talking if they shut me out of YouTube. I don't really care. I don't do this for money. I'm well off, so it is what it is, folks. I'll catch you later. Somebody cut me off.